What's up, my little fellow technical magicians? Welcome back to the channel. In here on a Saturday when there's nobody else and we can blast our tunes. It's an ideal scenario. It is also fun to catch rehearsals and have people weigh in as you work. So there's a 50-50 split here. During the week I get that work scenario, and on the weekend we can just come in and sort of chug on the meat and the potatoes and not be interrupted. It's always a fun project, this one. Now, we talked last time about how we were going to lightly build some pieces that give us the feeling of storefronts as you walk down the street. And we don't have a lot of lumber, we don't have a lot of money, and we don't want to go overboard with the weight. A lot of times when I'm building this set, I don't worry about weight because it normally has a small footprint and is relatively high when I'm building a set, because all the legs come in down the side, which break up the line of sight. All these legs here, you get, it's hard to see. I wonder if I could turn the light on and show you. I can't find the flash. Why can't I find it? Well, anyway, all the legs come down, and so the passages between the legs are 3 or 4 feet, maybe 5, and you can certainly have crew hold them open a little bit, but as you go up, you've got to thread the needle as you come in and out with a set piece. So usually there's an aspect to most of my set pieces that's pretty narrow. It's a small, narrow footprint, and then we go up because look at all that nice headroom we have, and there's no good reason to keep things as low down to the ground as possible. Because it's more spectacular when you can get things up and overhead. So given that, we often don't mind a lot of weight, and in the end I stack a bunch of extra steel rope weight in the bottom of the set piece so that despite the fact that it's tall and has a narrow aspect ratio for a footprint, it's not extremely tippy. Now this year, we are either going to suspend or stand up and work around these thin set pieces, and so nobody's going to be on there, walking up on there, and it doesn't have to be she don't have to be too heavy. It's hard to get away from adding weight. Of course, if you were to look at this, maybe there's about a dozen 10-foot 2x4s, if not a baker's dozen or 14, 15 here. So you can imagine 2 people trying to get an arm kind of around a dozen or more 2x4s and splitting that weight. It would still be quite a bit. I'd expect to see 300 pounds here anyway. Maybe at least 200, between 2 and 3. So depending on each one of these sticks, some of them are like styrofoam, some of them are like iron. There are some Doug firs in here, the pinky kind of tone, and that brightest white and really heavy texture is some of the most recent new growth spruce you can find, and most of these don't weigh a damn thing. So we're at a point where it can sort of look like a storefront to some of yins guys. Sort of has an awning happening over it, and generally this will be your perspective on it, sort of give you a sense, because I can turn the camera here as to what it's going to look like. Shaping up pretty cool. We did all the corbel profiles together on the bandsaw. Now these are some corbels I did a few years ago, and we've used them several times. They were on Adam's Family. They were on, what did I make them for? I made them for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. But I normally just illustrate quickly, some highlight and shadow, some carved detail here. They were constructed from 3/4 inch plywood and then like a simple angle brace in here, which really didn't have a purpose. It's just sort of, because it basically gets in the way. I can only ever anchor these with the one screw right through the face of them. And after I do that, then we cover them with cardboard and we staple the edges into the 3/4 ply, which is why they ended up being so heavily built. I was looking for an edge thickness that was good enough to carry it like a T50 staple. Otherwise, this could have just been Luan. And so the construction style makes for relatively light kind of architectural form like that. Now those are too big, but we will probably still use them on one of our storefronts because it's too good to waste those this year again. We made some smaller ones for here, and we're going to use a set of 4. They're not going to be as thick. They'll be 3 inches overall, and obviously they're smaller overall. We just took, I think, we made some 10-inch by 10-inch squares of plywood. How many did we need? 2, 4, 6, 8 of them. And then we set like a 5-gallon pail. I think we measured down like 3 inches from this edge, 3 inches from this edge, and set a 5-gallon pail on there and traced it. And then we measured 2 inches over and 2 inches over and set what I think was a pint of paint or something on there to the 2-inch mark and traced that. And then we just used a square to put a straight end there and a straight end there. And we quickly cut them out on the bandsaw. So you can see the finish here isn't great, and it doesn't need to be. We just needed to make sure that we were carrying the cardboard in a nice, meaningful way. We don't have to sand out all the tool marks. So this was a square, and so we made relief cuts in straight at the face of these curved cuts all the way. It took us probably at least half an hour to make these on the bandsaw, making all of our little relief cuts. And then we turned the whole block of everything up and just tore most of those little strips off with our claw hammer, claw side, to get most of the stuff out of our way. And then we came in and were able to actually cut this profile line and cut this profile line. And then in the end, we just touched everything up a little bit on the spindle sander just to sort of kiss it sort of smooth and carry the arc smoothly together. And, you know, you can see that that's kind of what happens there. But it's good enough for government work. It's good enough for public school musical theater. Like every year, we're looking to give ourselves a beautiful portfolio piece. But on top of that, if we're doing a really nice job for our portfolio, and being me, the royal we, the royal us, the royal plural, then the students are benefiting. And if I'm doing it around them and the ones that are interested ask questions or jump in and help me, or I can ask them to make things for me, and it's all win, 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 win. So those will be the corbels. In fact, that's going to be student work. I'm going to ask a student helper to make 3-inch wide strips of the RAM board, cardboard, tag board that we use. And then we will use 2x4, likely sliced in half. So we've got 2x2, which is of course 1.5 inches by 1.75 inches. But we will build our L bracket. This is what I'm going to tell them to do just while we're right here. And of course I get to talking and I don't really remember what it was I was trying to say. But we'll probably cut pieces that end with this flat flush, just so that we know once everything's covered with cardboard that we have available meat to screw in and attach anywhere from here to there, and there's just nothing outside of there. And I'll just remember that myself, but it's good enough for me. It's a nice rule of thumb. So if we're looking to end there and there, and we're looking to button pass, we'll have a piece in here like this, and we'll have a piece in here like that. And so first we'll establish what those lengths are. I'll ask them to make the right quantity based on what we're going to try and make here, and then we will glue and screw that together in the corner, so we have a button pass, glue and screw. And then we will set these pieces, one on either side of this, and we just pew, 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 shoot it with some 18-inch or 18-gauge brad nails, and then we'll have this assembly with a core of wood that, like I say, I can shoot right through the cardboard and screw it in and unscrew it. And then we'll apply the cardboard with some T50 staples, folding it around and stapling it, and then we'll trim it roughly, and then we can even float a long razor blade if it's overhanging and just kind of flush cut it off all the edges, and then we can gaff tape those too, so it's nice for paint. And I may use a little step bit to put a hole in the cardboard to run the screw in and out, and then we'll just cover the hole, the access port basically, with a little square of gaff tape as well, which is mostly the body work we do. A first stage is done with gaff tape, and it's good enough to the house. That's another bridge we're going to cross here, because we're going to be closer on this, and I think it's going to have to be taken for granted that we are still looking at a theater set. I don't think that we have the ability to push this to the level that it would be super clean and smooth. Of course, the rest of the building doesn't exist, so it kind of gets a pass. We're not building a filming set. We want elegance in our roughness. So that's a line that I have to walk between. This guy didn't know what he was doing, and this is a pretty cool use of 2x4 to, he tricked me, and that's kind of the line that we're going to walk here. So we'll get the corbels constructed, but, we'll have a student do that. Now, this awning was kind of a pain in my rear end because, well, actually this whole set piece, we needed this piece and this piece to start with to be full length 14 feet. In fact, I started with 16 feet because we had a few pieces in the basement. Actually, here they are right here. But as you can see, like we were talking last week, these are fully, I can't tell if you can see down there, but they're twisted to pieces. They got parallaxing or lens distortion with the camera, but, and I can't get the hot spot to get off of the wood. Get your hot spot off the wood, but take my word for it, they're twisted to shit. So, start with, I was going to have to go buy some, because what I'm going through here is the fact that they had to be one contiguous piece. I can scarf things end to end, but these are structural members here. They're keeping this assembly and that assembly spaced correctly with regard to one another, and they're keeping the top frame sort of and bottom frame from becoming parabolas and racking over this way or that, and we're using it to force it straight there. So they're doing kind of a lot of work. So they needed to be nice, and so I had to go buy some. And so I figured we'll need we're making 3 storefronts. Chances are they're all going to be about this width. I better get myself 6 of them, so I got a half dozen. Now I didn't get 16s because they were a few dollars more each than 14s. I made my peace with the 14s, saved a little bit of money, came back and shortened everybody here. You know, you'll never notice that this shrunk, 2 or 3 inches. This shrunk through 2 or 3 inches. And the pocket here is the product of what fits nicely around our mobile doors that have been around for several shows now. We built for a second, a show a long time ago, or several years anyway. So once this goes up, that door will roll into the front of it. And we have a rolling set of double doors that we used, again, in Adam's family that we may use on a storefront for this show too. So there'll be a couple storefronts, I think, built with alcoves correctly sized, basically 1/4 of an inch bigger all the way around, so that there's an 1/8 inch gap when you roll in those door assemblies. And so we'll be able to use them. I really hope that we do use them. Anyway, the awning edge was another place where the issue is we're going to try and carry Luan through here. So to start with, I made this surface, I don't have a pointer, so I made the surface of these pieces 24 inches long originally, because I figured I could rip 8-foot pieces of Luan at 24 inches wide, and I get 2 full pieces out of that, and that's a nice way to do it. But then I realized if I'm jumping from here to there, to there, to there, the Luan's going to bow. And so my nice leading edge, one of those important lines that carries, the look of this thing, once again, the look of this thing as an awning, either whether you're from, below or above it, which we won't probably be, but the point of it is it's a nice straight line, theoretically. And so to have whoops in it from the saggy Luan is going to screw us over. And so we needed something to catch that leading edge, and it needed to be one whole piece again, because again, while I could scarf things, just to get I have to stop and start a scarf on something that's structurally supporting it, the ends here, and so then my scarf, being a butt joint that's an angle cut like that, would have to fall on one of these. But of course I can find myself a piece like that, but then I still have to have a 10-foot piece, and I'm friggin' all around trying to get the scarf to line up, and so forget it, we'll just use another solid piece again. And these are those places where it's easier to go spend $12 or $13 on a piece of lumber than it is to sit here and monkey with that, because it have 5-6 screws in there to hold the scarf together and in the right position. And when you're dealing with old crispy lumber, it'll crack on you, but it'll be the last screw that you put in. So you get everything dialed in, and all it just needs is a little zoop, and everything will go pow, and a piece will fall out like this over here did on me. Right here. This is where this belonged. But you'll get something like that, and then you can glue that together again with wood glue and clamp it, and basically walk away from that area and come back again tomorrow. And if you do that 3 or 4 places, all of a sudden we're just stretching the timeline out further and further, all on account of the fact that you avoided buying just one long piece of lumber. So if you're not in the know, you don't know that it's important to do this, but I went out and basically bought out of my own pocket some nice lumber for that. So another thing that I found that was really nice was pre-ripped 24-inch long or 24-inch wide, 8-foot long pieces of Luan that's painted black on one side already. It must have been used. This is a mark for somebody to get to for something. Of course, we've got tons of pre-painted Luan. But what's going to be nice is I'll put this on like this, and I'll point that black down, because I know that when we're shooting, this surface underneath is high enough up that we'll be seeing underneath there. And we are going to have students paint out a lot of that, or I'll get up there with my nice handy-dandy paint sprayer that I've got to use on the set for the first time this year. I bought it earlier last year. And I'll black the rest of that stuff out. But I won't have to arduously black the underside, because of course it's already been painted. I had considered putting the black up because we're going to paint, and it kind of works as a nice primer base or something, but we're not doing any fine finish work here. That's a pointless fool's errand, so we'll just leave the unfinished wood up, and we'll just put our awning color directly on it, and we won't have a problem with that. So that we're going to pull this over. The way we'll do this is, sketch out our center line on this piece, and we'll pull this over and line our sheet up to it. We'll take the other half, and we'll start it on the center line in this one, and we'll leave the ends hang off. We'll put it all on there nice and square. We'll lop the end, then we'll get a measurement for the piece that we need in the middle, and we'll have to make a special piece for that. But and then we'll be in the position where this is being, the front edge of this is controlled. I can screw into this all the way along, and we can make our little scalloped piece of Luan and stick him to the face of this. And again, with a gaff tape on the outside corner, it'll look just like the awning. We will need a surface in here, and that's another place where if we make a little thin rip of Luan, once we've got this, awning surface to go, you get a thin rip in here, and it's doing like a belly. And see, our Luan is already curved, and so my concern is that you have a gap between the two of them that goes boop, like a long, thin football that you can't fix. Now, this thin strip of Luan that I would put through here, if that has a belly, that's not the biggest problem for me, because what I'm going to end up doing is applying some 1-inch lumber, most likely 4, 5, 6 inches wide, across the surface of everything, right on top of all the pieces of Luan, and then I can screw the Luan into the back side of that. But that strip is going to create, that strip and a couple more, is going to create basically the look of a big crown mold on the top here. Or in fact, I may put a leg facing up all the way along and put actual crown molding in that inside corner and paint it all in, but that would be how the top of this store ends. But those elements will hold the surface, 3 pieces of, dippy Luan up to me, and the 2 edges of the awning and the front surface of it will also be fastened. It's just going to be this top edge of awning, and I don't want to see it opening up and dipping down in those areas. And so that means to me that while I'm here and I'm thinking about it, I've got to come up with a solution to carry the edge of that awning material, and it's just kind of a bear, because if I were to put a piece of 2x4, for example, in here, it would be really nice to jump from there to there and put him in here like this, either at an angle untrimmed, or I could cut the back of him so it sits flush, and that's real nice. The only problem is, how do I fasten that? This isn't the way that you frame anything, and that's generally because there's not a lot of strength in it, but it's also a bear to fasten, because I can't get a screw long enough to come all the way. I could, a 5 or 6 inch screw, and screw through the long aspect of this 2x4 just to tag into the end of that. I could toenail it in, but I've got to pull those bugle heads in below the surface of the board so that my Luan lays flat on it. And when you pull, it's one thing to toenail an old piece of lumber and get away with it. When you start pulling that head in there, now you're really asking to split something out. And so we're running, into these issues. So I very well may need to rip an angle along the edge of a piece of lumber. At least I can do it in 3 pieces, but then I could take that angle, and it would allow it to sit down in here, how it doesn't sit there now, but that angle would sit down tight, and it would carry all the way along underneath. And then to that, I could just apply a second 2x4 to the surface of it. So from there, and we could apply one to the top that just stops short here, and screw him down to this one that could be screwed in either from the face or the back side there. Now I'm using 2 full 2x4s in each one of these openings just to carry the surface of some Luan straight and make my life easy. Because normally a lot of set builders and the people that normally work on the show here, if they're working without me on other shows that they don't have the budget, they would just put some gaff tape along that inside corner and hope that it holds it straight. And what happens basically is that over the few days or weeks before, since construction and before you use it, it just keeps falling apart on you and giving you trouble. And to climb up in the air and supplement or augment it is a nightmare. So we're just going to think ahead while we're right here, and we're going to do that much while we're right here. So we'll get the awning kind of skinned, the brick wall, or the building's wall above that little bit skinned up. We'll put what looks like a crown mold on there. I may try to find some of that chintzy, looks like brick beadboard. I think we have 1 sheet of it in the basement, and talk somebody into let me cut it up. But if we just had a few courses of brick above that molding, it would be a fun pseudo transition to the rest of the building above. We may or we may not do that. And with the addition of the corbels, and we're going to pack out the openings in the windows too, because right now they just look like 2x4. So once again, we're going to add another 2x4 to the bottom of this one, to the top of that one. So we're working with more of a square column. And then when we put our Luan on, it'll blend the seams between the two. But right now, if you were just to paint that, it's clearly a 2x4. It doesn't matter what you do, your brain just identifies it. And of course, we know that these things aren't real, but it's just so much nicer to add a stick like that and paint it in, and present a visual dimension that's harder to decipher. It's kind of the whole reason that I made these little squares. So, we talked last time about our simple geometry. This is our 8-foot piece, our 6-foot piece, our 2 15s, and then the bottom surface of the window is actually a frame that goes around like that. In fact, I'll get these corbels out of here. It's all very simple. So you can see this is just a frame like that I screwed in from here to there, but that creates this dimension here. It's nice and thick, and all we have to do is add 1.5 inches or something here to to carry that dimension around. And like I say, we'll add a 2x4 here, so this is more of a column. And then this lower wall, instead of putting the corbel right here and leaving the 2x4's thickness, I framed another simple box and I haven't trimmed the Luan on it yet, but I framed a simple box with no studs, not necessary, just to carry the face of the Luan that would normally just go on here. But here we have added a few more pounds again, all in the name of avoiding that common visual aspect ratio of the 2x4. And they know me here when they have me work every year. I'm friends with the faculty and stuff every year that does this together, but they know one of my biggest things is that identifiable dimension of 2x4. So we're getting away from that in here too. And like I say, we'll put Luan on all of this after we double these up, and then I'll trim rounder it out, and it'll be one smooth end. And you won't be able to easily identify what this thing is made of, because we're going to do our best to make the whole thing look like, you know, steel. And sometimes these things, I guess, may have been wood, but in any event, it'll be looking commercial and hopefully pretty cool. So let's come back and check it out when we have more of that stuff skinned up, and we're going to stand it up too. And I think we might go with some big gusset legs like we talked about not doing before, with sandbags on them to hold it up straight. But things change. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. We'll see you.